Amid countless worlds that seem like pure fiction, lie battles, sacrifices, and secrets that have never been told. Every story is a war between destiny and choice. If you're ready to uncover heroes, villains, and the forgotten souls lost in between, then step into the world of Comic Recap, where every tale is a battle for survival.
In the remote depths of Black Marsh, where the morning mist clings to ancient roots and the air pulses with primal energy, stand the hissed, trees towering sentient beings older than the mortal world itself. These are no ordinary plants. They are conscious entities whose strange intelligence has shaped Argonian culture for countless ages. To understand the Argonians, one must first grasp their bond with these ancient beings, for their existence is deeply intertwined. Dawn cannot truly exist without the other. The Hist arose from the chaotic void that existed before time began, when the line between dreams and reality was still undefined. Archaeological finds and preserved memories from the oldest Hist groves suggest these beings were present at the creation of the world, silently witnessing as the Aedra gave up their divine essence to form the mortal realm. Unlike the Ilni, who became the ancestors of men and elves, or the wandering spirits that formed the beast races, the Hist followed a different pathone of silent observation and careful nurturing. These trees defy typical botanical understanding. Some grow hundreds of feet tall, with trunks over 30 feet wide. Their bark has a scaled texture resembling Argonian skin, and their roots stretch for miles beneath the marshes, forming vast underground networks that link distant trees together. The canopy of a mature Hist can cover entire Argonian villages, its broad leaves casting shifting patterns of light on the ground below. Most extraordinary is the sap that flows through Thema glowing blue-green liquid with seemingly magical properties. This sap is more than just nourishment. It acts as a vessel for consciousness, holding the memories, experiences, and wisdom of countless generations. When Argonians consume this sacred sap, they don't merely ingest a substance, they connect with the shared mind of their people and receive insight from beings that have witnessed the ebb and flow of civilizations. The change that takes place when early reptilian creatures first come into contact with Hist sap is considered one of the most extraordinary examples of both biological and spiritual transformation in Tamriel's history. Researchers describe the process as a form of rapid evolution, unfolding in moments rather than over thousands of years. The sap does more than reshape the body. It activates unused areas of the brain, enhances neural connections, and rewrites the recipient's genetic structure. Simple swamp lizards that come near the Hist, once little more than animals, emerge as intelligent, reasoning beings with emotional complexity. This transformation doesn't stop at the first contact. Throughout their lives, these beings remain linked to the Hist by regularly consuming its sap, which serves various roles in their society. Young individuals receive controlled doses that guide their physical development, shaping them into different role-storing warriors, agile scouts, or strong laborers. The sap also affects mental growth, sharpening or limiting certain cognitive traits depending on community needs and the Hist's intent. This connection between body and Hist influence puzzles foreign scholars. Unlike other peoples whose physical traits stay mostly consistent across generations, these beings show an extraordinary range of forms, that seem to adapt directly to environmental conditions and the guidance of the Hist. Some develop crocodile-like features such as long snouts and strong jaws. Others have frilled necks and can change color, and some show amphibian traits like enhanced swimming and extended underwater breathing. The Hist's influence reaches beyond individual changes to shape the very organization of their communities. Each major village is built around a Hist tree, which acts as a source of knowledge, a gathering place for decisions, and a religious center. The trees communicate with their people through dreams, visions, and direct mental contact during sap rituals. These messages are often felt as deep emotional impressions, expressing ideas beyond the limits of spoken words. Findings from deep within Black Marsh suggest the Hist has been influencing local reptilian life since before time was recorded. Fossils from ancient sediment layers show creatures that appear to be in transitional stages between basic marsh lizards and the modern sentient forms. These remains indicate long-term genetic shaping, with each generation showing gradual changes that eventually led to the fully intelligent beings seen today. The method by which the Hist initially chose which reptilian species to elevate is still unknown. Some theories suggest the trees selected creatures that already showed basic social behaviors and problem-solving skills, while others believe the decision was influenced by physical traits suited to the harsh conditions of Black Marsh. The most convincing evidence suggests it was a combination of both, with the Hist favoring species that had the intelligence for complex thought and the physical adaptability needed to survive in the swamps. The relationship between the Argonians and the Hist functions on several levels. At the simplest level, the Hist provide the sap that fuels Argonian consciousness and growth. In return, Argonians act as the mobile agents of the Hist's will, operating in places where the rooted trees cannot. This relationship benefits both sides. The Argonians gain intelligence, purpose, and access to the Hist's vast collective knowledge. Beyond the practical, there is a spiritual link between each Argonian and their ancestral tree. This bond goes beyond physical distance, allowing Argonians to remain connected to their Hist through meditation and ritual, even when far from home. The connection is experienced differently by each individual. Some receive visions or prophetic dreams, while others feel a subtle awareness of their Hist's presence, like a quiet voice in the background of their mind. This bond reaches its peak at death, when an Argonian's consciousness merges with the Hist's collective memory in an event known as the final joining. Rather than ending, the individual becomes part of a greater whole, adding their experiences and knowledge to the Hist's wisdom, which in turn shapes future generations. Witnesses have described seeing a faint glow leave the body and float toward a Hist grove, unaffected by distance or barriers. This connection goes beyond Black Marsh. The Hist's intelligence follows its own logic, often clashing with the goals and understanding of other races in Tamriel. While humans and elves focus on individual success and linear advancement, the Hist are concerned with the long-term evolution and well-being of their Argonian descendants over centuries. This difference in worldview has led to many conflicts as outsiders struggle to understand motives that seem entirely alien. The Hist remember events that happened long before written history, including disasters and upheavals that other civilizations have forgotten. This extensive collection of knowledge occasionally influences the guidance given to Argonian leaders, resulting in decisions that may seem enigmatic to those who lack a deep historical perspective. The trees hold the memories of the Dwemer's rise and fall, the Dragon War, and many other significant moments in Tamriel's history, all seen as part of ongoing cycles that span geological time. To truly understand the strong bond between the Argonians and their Hisgardians, one must closely examine the land that has shaped both species over countless millennia. Black Marsh, or Argonia, as its native inhabitants call it, is arguably the most unwelcoming and foreign province in the Empire of Tamriel. This massive wetland covers the southeastern part of the continent with around 40,000 square miles of interconnected swamps, marshes, rivers, and dense jungle that have resisted conquest for over 4,000 years. The coastal regions present the first and often final challenge to would-be invaders. The northern coastline along the Merowin border consists of tidal flats and salt marshes that stretch inland for many miles. These seemingly solid grounds are treacherous, with quicksand and hidden sinkholes capable of swallowing entire Imperial survey teams unexpectedly. The vegetation here grows in stunted, twisted shapes, adapted to the high salt content of the soil, giving the area a diseased appearance to outsiders. Enormous mangrove forests dominate the eastern shores, with their aerial root systems forming complex waterways that make navigation difficult for Imperial naval forces. Moving further inland from these coastal barriers, the land gradually transitions into the swampland that defines the Argonian homeland. The water table is just beneath the surface in most of Black Marsh, creating a constantly saturated environment where solid ground exists only in elevated patches. During the rainy season, which lasts anywhere from 4 to 8 months depending on the region, water levels rise several feet, turning previously accessible areas into temporary lakes and forcing even the native Argonians to rely on boats and raised walkways for transportation. The river systems that drain Black Marsh form a complicated network of waterways that serve as the primary routes for Argonian civilization. The Topple River, the largest, begins in the Central Highlands near the border with Cyrodiil and flows eastward toward the sea, gathering numerous tributaries along the way. These waterways range from wide channels to narrow creeks barely wide enough for a single canoe, yet all share traits that make them perfectly suited for Argonian biology while remaining dangerous for outsiders. The water itself is dark brown due to a high concentration of dissolved organic matter, which sustains complex ecosystems of bacteria and microorganisms that are toxic to non-native species. The distribution of hiss groves throughout this challenging landscape reflects both the ancient origins of these trees and their lasting influence on Argonian society. Large groves are found near the headwaters of important river systems, where the combination of high ground and reliable water creates the best conditions for the growth of massive trees. These main groves typically house between 12 and 30 individual hiss trees, with their intertwined root systems forming underground networks that can stretch for miles. Archaeological findings suggest these areas have been continuously inhabited for over 3,000 years, with successive generations of locals establishing settlements in concentric circles around the sacred trees. Smaller groves are located along major waterways, usually spaced 15 to 20 meters apart. These clusters, containing between 3 and 8 hiss trees, act as stopping points for travelers passing through the marsh. The strategic positioning of these secondary groves reflects centuries of planning, ensuring they support the collective influence of the Hist, while also remaining defensible against threats. Each secondary grove is home to 50 to 300 caretakers who protect and maintain the trees. The sacred status of these hissed groves goes beyond being population centers. They also serve as knowledge repositories and spiritual hubs. The trees themselves alter the surrounding environment in subtle but significant ways, creating microclimates that differ from the surrounding swamp. The soil around the main groves contains rare minerals that support unique plant species not found elsewhere in the region. Water from nearby streams often glows faintly, similar to hissed sap, and these environmental changes seem to grow stronger over time, suggesting that the trees are gradually reshaping their surroundings to suit their needs. The marsh's flora is hazardous to unprepared visitors, with many plant species evolving toxic defenses against the aggressive animals of the region. The swamp fever blossom, found in dense clusters across the middle marsh, releases spores that carry a potent disease. Even short exposure to the spores can cause fever, hallucinations, and death if untreated. Though locals have developed natural immunity to most strains of swamp fever, they still take precautions around areas with large concentrations of these plants. Strangler vines, which hang thickly from larger trees, are an immediate physical danger. These carnivorous plants constrict rapidly when they detect movement, injecting paralytic toxins that immobilize victims while slowly crushing and digesting them. Imperial records document numerous instances of soldiers becoming ensnared by these vines during the failed invasion attempts of the Second Era. The armor of the soldiers offered little resistance against the relentless persistence of the plants. The hissed themselves occasionally produce defensive vegetation in areas where they detect potential threats. Thorn barriers appear overnight around groves facing external pressures, creating walls of intertwined branches covered in sharp spines that can pierce even the finest armor. These barriers seem to grow with a form of collective intelligence, forming intricate mazes that lead intruders into designated killing zones while providing hidden pathways for the defenders. The swamps of Black Marsh prove equally dangerous to outsiders, with predators specially adapted to exploit the unique environmental conditions. Bog basilisks, enormous reptilian creatures measuring over 20 feet in length, lurk in the deeper pools of the marsh. These ambush predators can remain motionless for hours, blending perfectly with the floating vegetation thanks to their green and brown scales. When prey draws near, the basilisk launches itself from the water with surprising speed. Its powerful jaws can crush a horse's skull with a single bite. Swamp leviathans pose an even greater threat, although their numbers are limited by territorial behavior and the vast hunting ranges needed to sustain their enormous size. These ancient creatures can exceed 40 feet in length and appear to be distant relatives of dragons, though they cannot fly or breathe fire. Instead, they can generate strong electrical discharges from specialized organs in their skulls, stunning both prey and enemies before closing in for the kill. Imperial naturalists speculate that these creatures are surviving examples of pre-dawn era fauna that adapted to the changing world, possibly through intervention from the hissed. The insect life in Black Marsh presents one of the most pervasive dangers to outsiders, with numerous species carrying diseases that are fatal to non-natives. Bloodflies form swarms so thick they can block out the sunlight. Their bites transmit a wasting illness that causes victims to hemorrhage from their pores over the course of several weeks. Marsh wasps build their nests in the hollow trunks of dead trees, and their venom causes rapid tissue decay that spreads from the site of the bite throughout the victim's body. Even the seemingly harmless glow beetles carry parasitic larvae that burrow under the skin and grow into thumb-sized grubs, feeding on the host's blood. The deep marsh is the ultimate representation of Black Marsh's hostility toward outsiders. This vast area covers the central and southern parts of the province, where swampy terrain transitions into dense jungle that blocks out much of the sunlight, creating a constant twilight on the ground. No Imperial expedition has ever managed to go more than 50 meters into this region and return with their findings. Survivors of deep marsh expeditions describe a landscape that seems to actively resist their presence, with shifting paths, erratic compasses, and the unsettling feeling of being watched by unseen forces. The dangers of the deep marsh extend beyond physical threats to include phenomena that challenge the very nature of reality. Certain areas experience frequent temporal distortions, where explorers encounter time loops, accelerated aging, or memories of future events. Some regions have gravitational anomalies that cause water to flow uphill or objects to fall sideways, while others seem to constantly change, with the landscape reshaping itself according to unknown forces. The disease environment in Black Marsh is another factor that has kept foreign settlements at bay. In addition to the well-known dangers of swamp fever and blood rot, the marsh is home to numerous diseases found nowhere else in Tamriel. Bone wilt causes the victim's skeleton to gradually soften and dissolve, leaving them helpless until death. Scale blight hardens and cracks the skin, turning the victim into a living statue who remains conscious but unable to move or speak. The Argonians' natural resistance to these diseases comes from their unique physiology and their connection to the hist, whose sap provides immune support. However, even Argonians must take precautions when entering the most contaminated areas, using protective rituals and consuming special hist sap to temporarily boost their resistance to environmental hazards. The climate of Black Marsh contributes to its reputation as an uninhabitable wasteland. Humidity rarely drops below 80%, fostering rapid decay and the growth of various molds and fungi. Temperatures remain consistently warm throughout the year, with little seasonal variation, making the heat oppressive. This combination of high humidity and warmth causes metal to corrode quickly, leather to rot within weeks, and even stone structures to deteriorate over time due to moisture and organic acids. The wide variety of Argonian physical forms is one of the most intriguing aspects of their species, defying traditional concepts of biological development and racial classification. Unlike humans and elves, Argonians show an extraordinary range of physical variations, which appear to be directly influenced by environmental conditions, community needs, and, most importantly, the specific effects of individual histories. Do you like this personality? This adaptability is evident not only in slight differences in height or body shape, but also in significant variations in body structure, sensory abilities, and specialized physiological functions, making some Argonian populations appear almost as distinct species. The most commonly found Argonians in the Empire are known for their humanoid form, bipedal, ranging from 5 to 7 feet tall, with proportions similar to humans or elves. They have a scaled skin that offers natural protection against physical damage and environmental risks. The pattern and color of their scales vary widely between individuals and regions, serving functions beyond mere defense, such as changing color in response to emotions, surroundings, or intentional camouflage. The head structure of humanoid Argonians varies greatly, with some showing more reptilian traits, like long snouts, prominent ridges over the eyes, and visible ear structures, while others exhibit more lizard-like features such as frilled necks, crests, or horns. These differences seem to be linked to the type of hyssap consumed during key stages of development, suggesting that specific trees may affect their physical growth based on community needs or ancient genetic blueprints. Argonian hands are adapted to their swampy surroundings, with 4 fingers and an opposable thumb on each hand, each ending in retractable claws up to 2 inches long. These claws can pierce leather armor or strip bark from trees, but are also fine-tuned enough for delicate tasks. The palms and fingers have partial webbing, helping them swim, yet they remain flexible enough for using tools. Argonian feet are even more specialized, typically having 3 main toes and a smaller rear-facing digit, similar to a dew claw. The toes have extensive webbing that expands or contracts as needed, providing strong propulsion for swimming, yet can fold up for walking. The claws on their feet are larger and sturdier, designed for gripping slippery surfaces and navigating the unstable terrain of Black Marsh. Argonians have unique adaptations in their respiratory system that allow them to stay underwater for long periods. Their lungs can compress to reduce buoyancy and store more oxygen, while additional air sacs in the torso offer extra reserves. Most notably, Argonians have rudimentary gill slits behind their jaws, which are usually hidden by scales or skin folds. While these are mostly vestigial in land-dwelling Argonians, they can become functional with enough exposure to water and proper hist sap treatment. Argonian cardiovascular systems operate more slowly than those of warm-blooded species, conserving energy during times of inactivity. However, they can quickly increase their heart rate and circulation when needed, making this system especially beneficial for the extended stillness often required in Argonian hunting and defense tactics, allowing them to stay alert without consuming too many resources. In addition to the common humanoid forms, the Black Marsh is home to various Argonian subspecies that diverge significantly from the standard bipedal structure. One of the most notable examples of this variation is the Naga. These creatures possess serpent-like lower bodies that can grow up to 15 feet or more in fully grown individuals. While they maintain humanoid torsos and arms, they move using a form of undulating motion that is highly efficient both in water and on land. Naga Argonians typically evolve in response to specific environmental pressures or the needs of their communities, such as the need for better mobility in dense vegetation or underwater environments. Their long bodies allow them to navigate spaces that would be impossible for bipedal forms, and their increased surface area enhances their sensory abilities, including detecting vibrations, chemical traces, and electromagnetic fields through specialized scales. The muscular strength required to support their serpentine movement also gives Naga Argonians immense physical power, with mature individuals capable of constricting prey or enemies with force greater than natural constrictors of similar size. The shift from humanoid to Naga form happens during adolescence, triggered by a combination of his sap and environmental factors. Young Argonians destined to become Naga show signs such as elongated spines and decreased leg bone density early in their growth. The full transformation occurs over several months, while the individual stays close to their guiding history. The process is physically taxing and requires oversight by experienced shamans who regulate sap intake and provide necessary treatments to ensure the transformation is successful. Another significant subspecies is the behemoth Argonians, enormous individuals that can grow taller than 9 feet and weigh as much as half a ton. These creatures develop in response to the community's need for heavy labor, construction work, or defense, requiring extraordinary strength and resilience. Behemoth Argonians possess larger scales that offer extra protection against physical damage, and their muscular and skeletal systems are reinforced to support their greater size and strength. Their heads typically have features resembling crocodiles, such as long snouts and powerful jaws equipped with large teeth for crushing. Their limbs are thick and pillar-like, prioritizing power and stability over speed and agility, making them ideal for sustained physical labor or defending positions against overwhelming forces. On the smaller end of the spectrum, the shadow scale subspecies is specifically bred for stealth and infiltration. These Argonians are usually no taller than 5 feet and have lean, agile bodies built for speed. Their scales are darker and optimized for camouflage, and their sensory organs are highly developed to allow them to function effectively in low-light environments. Shadow scale Argonians undergo specialized training from a young age to hone both their physical abilities and psychological conditioning. The hissed sap they receive contains compounds that enhance their nervous system while suppressing certain emotional responses, preparing them for roles as spies and assassins. The outcome produces individuals capable of exceptional stealth and precision, while remaining completely loyal to their history and community. The aquatic version of Argonians, occasionally referred to as deep swim variants, exhibit the most noticeable physical changes for underwater living. These individuals have fully functional gills that enable them to remain submerged indefinitely, while their limbs develop extensive webbing and fin-like appendages, offering outstanding swimming abilities. Their eyes undergo modifications to improve vision underwater, including protective membranes that shield against debris and specialized lenses that adjust for the optical properties of water. Deep swim Argonians usually live in the deepest areas of marshlands, river systems, and coastal regions, serving as scouts, messengers, and protectors of submerged hissed trees. Their society is very different from that of their land-dwelling relatives, with communities organized around underwater caves and submerged root networks, offering safety from surface threats while maintaining ties to the broader Hist collective. The influence of the Hist on Argonian evolution extends beyond physical changes to include alterations in sensory functions, cognitive abilities, and even lifespan. Various Hist trees seem to specialize in producing sap that fosters particular types of development, with some groves being known for raising exceptional warriors, while others focus on scholars, artisans, or spiritual leaders. The exact process by which trees decide the developmental path for each Argonian is not fully understood, but seems to involve a complex assessment of genetic potential, community needs, and individual inclinations. The regenerative abilities of Argonians are among their most impressive biological traits, allowing them to recover from injuries that would be permanently debilitating to other species. Minor wounds heal in hours rather than days, and more severe injuries, such as broken bones, severed digits, and even organ damage can mend over time with the right hist sap. The regenerative process seems to speed up near histories, suggesting that healing relies not only on biological mechanisms, but also on the connection to the collective consciousness. The most dramatic instances of Argonian regeneration involve the regrowth of entire limbs, a process that can take months to years, depending on the severity of the injury and access to his sap. Argonian females generally lay between 3 and 7 eggs during their reproductive years. These eggs require around 4 months of incubation under carefully maintained conditions. The shells are highly durable, capable of withstanding physical pressure, while still allowing air and moisture to pass through both, essential for proper development. The incubation process is sensitive and requires constant attention, as the embryos are vulnerable to changes in temperature, humidity, and environmental toxins. Skilled caretakers closely monitor each clutch, adjusting conditions and applying treatments to support successful hatching. Egg-laying sites are chosen based on strict guidelines, often located near hist groves, where the tree's natural influence begins affecting the eggs even before they hatch. When the young Argonians emerge, they appear as small versions of adults with basic movement and sensory abilities, but they do not yet possess higher cognitive functions. In their early life, they need dedicated care due to weak immune systems and underdeveloped temperature regulation. Assigned caretakers, selected for their experience, guide them through this vital stage. At about 2 years of age, a key transformation occurs during the hist sap ceremony, a sacred ritual marking the shift from basic intelligence to full awareness. This involves consuming a specially prepared form of hist sap under close supervision. The mixture and dosage are tailored to the individual's observed development and talents. The effects of the ceremony are profound and permanent, triggering rapid brain development over several days or weeks. During this period, the young Argonian experiences intense dreams and visions through which they absorb large amounts of cultural knowledge, history, and practical skills from the collective memory of the hist. This mentally and physically demanding process is closely supervised to prevent psychological harm. Those who successfully complete the ritual emerge with full awareness and a deep understanding of their culture, language, social norms, and often specialized skills linked to their future role. The content of this knowledge appears influenced by both the individual's natural abilities and the needs of their community, as determined by the hist. Argonian society operates under a unique structure distinct from imperial hierarchies or Nordic clan systems. Instead of status based on birthright, wealth, or military strength, social roles are assigned at birth, guided by celestial patterns and destinies revealed by the hist. Is this conversation helpful so far? This structured social system, while seemingly inflexible from an outside perspective, actually allows for considerable adaptability. It enables communities to reorganize in response to changing conditions while preserving the spiritual links that define each individual's role. The system is grounded in ancient beliefs about the stars and their influence on mortal lives. Unlike other cultures that focus on birth or conception, this tradition centers on the moment a hatchling emerges from its egg. Experienced star readers, usually elder shamans, examine the exact arrangement of stars, moons, and planets visible at that precise instant. They also consider subtle signs from the nearby hist tree, such as changes in sap brightness or leaf movement to determine the hatchling's core traits and future path within the community. One of the most important signs comes from a rare star pattern known as the shadow constellation, which only appears under specific conditions every few months. Hatchlings born when this constellation dominates are believed to have a unique destiny. These individuals, called shadow scales, hold a special and often feared status within the society, though their existence is little known beyond it. Within hours of hatching, potential shadow scales are identified through both celestial readings and physical signs. Star readers look for distinctive scale patterns, unusual eye reflections, and a natural tendency to seek out darkness rather than light. If these traits appear during the right star alignment, the hatchling is chosen for a life of service beyond the ordinary. Training for shadow scales begins almost immediately. They are raised by specialized mentors, retired shadow scales themselves, who oversee every stage of their development. These mentors provide not just training in stealth, combat, and infiltration, but also prepare them mentally to operate in unfamiliar environments while remaining completely loyal to their origins. Their physical training includes flexibility, joint control, and the ability to move in ways impossible for others. Breathing techniques help them slow vital functions to evade detection. Combat instruction focuses on silence and precision, using both natural abilities like claws and specialized weapons crafted for covert missions. The mental conditioning involved is just as demanding, as shadow scales must learn to operate alone for long periods in dangerous environments, far from any source of support or contact with their people. Their training includes strategies for handling emotional isolation, methods to stay connected to the collective consciousness of the Hist over great distances, and, most critically, the mastery of complete emotional discipline, enabling them to carry out their tasks without regard to personal feelings or moral judgments. This preparation often includes exposure to escalating stress meant to build mental strength and weed out those who lack the necessary temperament for the role. The bond between shadow scales and the larger Argonian society represents a delicate mix of necessity and sorrow, a theme common in Black Marsh culture. These individuals are honored for their dedication and sacrifice, but their intense training and departure from home leave a lasting absence that affects entire communities. Families who give birth to future shadow scales understand that they may never see them again once training is complete. Most of these assassins spend their careers away from Black Marsh, carrying out missions assigned by the Hist that can span many decades or even centuries. The tasks given to shadow scales typically involve neutralizing threats to Argonian well-being. While outsiders may not understand the reasons behind these missions, the Hist's vast, ancient awareness allows them to recognize long-term dangers across generations. For example, an apparently harmless Imperial trader might be targeted because the Hist foresee his descendants founding a trading hub that eventually paves the way for an invasion. Similarly, a talented Dunmer mage might be marked because her teleportation research could one day compromise the hidden locations sacred to Argonians. To fulfill their missions, shadow scales must master skills in blending into different cultures and societies. Many spend years creating false identities, learning local languages and traditions so thoroughly that they become indistinguishable from the native population. Some maintain these cover identities for decades, even rising to powerful roles within foreign governments or groups, waiting for the exact moment to complete their true objective. This level of patience reflects the Hist's perspective on time, where centuries matter more than years, and immediate concerns are outweighed by long-term strategy. Apart from their roles as assassins, Argonian naming traditions also show their strong spiritual ties to the Hist. Unlike human or elven cultures, where names often come from family or ancestral honors, Argonian names are given during a ritual known as the sap ceremony. This rite marks the individual's emergence into full awareness and gives them a name that reflects both their place in society and their personal spiritual identity, as seen by the ancient trees. Argonian names usually have several parts, each carrying specific information about who the person is and the path laid out for them. The central part of the name, usually 2 to 4 syllables, reveals the person's core spiritual self, as understood through their bond with the Hist. Many of these original names include sounds and syllable patterns that are difficult for outsiders to pronounce, often involving clicking consonants, tone shifts, or harmonic overtones that require specific vocal abilities. Additional parts of the name reveal information about the person's birthplace, their societal role, and their connection to certain histories or sacred groves. These elements evolve throughout the individual's life, reflecting achievements, completed missions, or major spiritual changes. Elder members may carry names made up of many of these components, forming elaborate titles that act as complete life stories for those who understand the cultural background needed to interpret them. The way these histories produce suitable names remains one of the most enigmatic parts of the culture, seemingly involving a direct link between the consciousness of the sacred trees and the developing minds of young individuals. Witnesses to naming ceremonies often describe the person entering a trance-like state, during which they seem to receive intricate information directly from the trees. Afterward, the person usually emerges with full understanding of their new name, its significance, and its pronunciation, even if it includes unfamiliar elements. Some names reference elements of nature, landscapes, or important historical events that are meaningful within the shared memory of the tree consciousness. A person might be named after a type of storm, a curve in a river, or a long-past battle. These references help tie individuals to the larger cultural and historical narrative, while also offering direction for their future roles within it. Spiritual leaders, and those who speak on behalf of the sacred trees, fulfill roles that in other cultures would be divided among various professions. They act as spiritual advisors, healers, judges, historians, and diplomats. Their influence stems from their strong connection to the collective consciousness of the trees. Becoming such a figure takes decades, requiring not only spiritual depth, but also the mental ability to understand and convey the often symbolic messages received from their spiritual guides. Those who are called to this path usually begin having visions or prophetic dreams during adolescence, which grow more intense over time. These dreams often involve direct communication with the trees, conveying symbolic messages that must be carefully interpreted. Those experiencing these signs are evaluated by experienced leaders who judge whether the visions are genuine and whether the individual is mentally prepared for the responsibilities of serving as a link between the tree consciousness and the community. Training for this role involves long periods of solitude, during which candidates learn how to recognize the subtle ways the trees express their will. Their education includes memorizing vast oral traditions, developing meditation techniques that enhance communication, and learning how to prepare and use various tree-based substances for healing, guidance, and ritual purposes. Advanced training also includes interpreting natural signs, leading complex ceremonies to ensure the spiritual health of the community, and learning how to interact diplomatically with leaders from other groups. Is this conversation helpful so far? Experienced shamans maintain their bond with the Hist by regularly consuming specially prepared sap. This sap heightens their sensitivity to spiritual communication and shields them from the mental strain of acting as channels for otherworldly consciousness. The sap's composition differs among Hist groves and individual shamans, with each tree offering unique blends tailored to optimize its connection with chosen individuals. These mixtures often cause side effects that set shamans apart from others, such as improved night vision, the ability to perceive emotions in others, and sometimes limited foresight into future events. Argonian society is organized along tribal lines that correspond to the locations of Hist groves across Black Marsh and the demands of surviving in such a harsh environment. Each significant grove usually supports a central tribe, consisting of several hundred to a few thousand members, depending on the grove's size and influence. These tribes are responsible for caring for their respective trees and act as political and economic centers for smaller surrounding settlements. A strong sense of collective identity binds Argonian tribes, based on shared consciousness experiences that are difficult for outsiders to understand. Regular group sap rituals create temporary mental links through which participants can directly share thoughts, emotions, and sensations. With repeated ceremonies, these links become permanent, allowing individuals to maintain connections even when far from home. This shared consciousness influences all aspects of tribal leadership and decision-making. Major decisions are made through group meditations in which individuals consult the Hist and share their thoughts psychically. The result is genuine consensus, as every participant comprehends the full context behind each viewpoint. Relationships between tribes are governed by intricate customs that respect the autonomy of individual Hist groves, while recognizing the spiritual and ancestral ties connecting all Argonians. Formal diplomatic interactions usually involve the exchange of shamans, who act as messengers and ensure that all communication is spiritually validated. These missions often take months or years, due to the Hist's unique perception of time, which demands prolonged deliberation over important matters. Tribal territories are shaped by both resource needs and the spiritual influence of nearby Hist groves. Natural features like rivers or ridges often mark these borders, along with unseen spiritual boundaries that define the grove's control over the local ecosystem. Crossing these lines, even unintentionally, can provoke reactions ranging from subtle environmental shifts to aggressive defense mechanisms, such as plant-based responses or hostile wildlife. Large-scale exploitation of Argonian labor began in the late First Era, when the expanding Dunmer Great Houses saw economic value in the region's abundant and intelligent reptilian population. Unlike earlier random raids, the slave trade of this period became a calculated operation aimed at maximizing profit while avoiding the dangers of military campaigns in Argonia's perilous terrain. House Dres played a central role in organizing and profiting from a vast system of forced labor, using its location along the Morrowind Black Marsh border to build a network of trading posts, fortified sites, and slave processing centers that shaped the local economy for more than 2,000 years. Their ancestral lands in Morrowind's fertile southern river valleys served as launch points for slave raids. These territories also supported large-scale agricultural operations, particularly salt rice plantations, which demanded immense labor to maintain irrigation, harvest crops, and prepare them for export across the empire. Early slave raids targeted outlying Black Marsh settlements that lacked protection from major hist groves or the natural defenses of the region's difficult terrain. These missions were carried out by small, agile units, using equipment tailored for swamp conditions, such as waterproof armor, flat-bottomed boats, and corrosion-resistant weapons. Raiders avoided direct clashes with organized Argonian groups, instead relying on ambush tactics and taking advantage of internal tribal disputes. As the raiders gained more knowledge of Argonian physical traits and behavior, they developed new methods of restraint. Standard Imperial equipment proved ineffective, as Argonians could easily escape using their flexible bodies and clawed limbs. In response, slavers created devices such as metal collars with heavy chains, leg shackles that restricted swimming, and muzzles that blocked natural weapons but allowed for basic functions like breathing and eating. Transporting captured Argonians to Morrowind markets involved significant logistical challenges, requiring specialized infrastructure and planning. The trip could last weeks or months, depending on weather, caravan size, and resistance encountered. Fortified way stations were built along key routes, offering secure resting points for guards and containment for prisoners during the journey. House Lu approached the trade differently, emphasizing commerce and leveraging imperial connections. Instead of conducting raids, they purchased Argonians from suppliers like house dress or independent traders, then distributed them to markets across the empire. Their ships delivered captives to cities in Cyrodiil, Hammerfell, and as far as High Rock, where wealthy buyers paid high prices for labor suited to particular tasks. Permanent slave markets marked a turning point, turning what began as opportunistic raiding into a structured commercial system. This included consistent pricing, standardized processes, and business schedules aligned with agricultural and trade cycles. The town of Ter became the center of this trade due to its location at the junction of major rivers, granting access to both raiding zones and Morrowind cities. Ter's slave market featured a large compound with stone buildings, wooden pens, and assessment facilities. The central auction hall held hundreds of spectators during large events, with raised platforms for viewing and auctioneers providing detailed descriptions of each captive's skills, health, and estimated productivity. Separate holding areas were used to confine enslaved individuals awaiting sale, with different sections designated based on their intended roles, physical health, and market value. Traders organized captives according to practical labor needs and prejudiced beliefs that shaped their treatment of Argonians. Those considered most valuable typically included young, physically strong men, women of childbearing age, and individuals with specialized skills such as crafting, literacy, or magical talent. These individuals fetched the highest prices and were treated better to preserve their value until sold. Less desirable captives included the elderly with limited working years, young children not yet fit for labor, and adults weakened by injury or illness. Though sold at lower prices, these individuals still offered profits to traders aiming for quicker sales. The lowest tier consisted of those assigned to hazardous and unpleasant tasks such as mining and sewer work, which carried a high risk of death. The broader impact of enslavement on Argonian culture was profound and long-lasting. Fear of slave raids forced many communities to abandon long-established settlements, either moving deeper into marshlands or adopting mobile lifestyles to avoid capture. This upheaval weakened ties to their ancestral trees, disrupting traditional guidance systems and spiritual connections. The loss of population due to targeted raids caused significant demographic shifts. With the capture of the young and skilled, many communities were left with children, the elderly, and those unfit for labor. This undermined the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next, as key cultural figures vanished before they could teach successors. Economically, raids destroyed infrastructure, halted farming efforts, and redirected communal energy from development to defense. Communities that once focused on aquaculture, craftsmanship, and spiritual upkeep had to shift priorities to mere survival. The trauma left behind by these events led to long-term social instability, as survivors of abductions experienced anxiety and found it difficult to reintegrate. The ever-present threat of raids bred a culture of fear, leading to cautious decision-making and withdrawal from activities that might attract attention. In response to this prolonged assault, the Hiss displayed a form of intelligence marked by patience. Rather than reacting with immediate force, they appeared to adopt a long-term strategy aimed at slowly developing responses to the crisis over generations. Certain groups began creating Argonians with enhanced stealth abilities, tailored for missions involving infiltration and sabotage. Others focused on developing individuals with greater resistance to disease, enabling them to endure the harsh environments typically forced upon slave laborers. One of the most notable elements of Argonian resistance to slavery was the formation of underground networks that helped enslaved individuals escape. These secretive organizations operated with a mix of practical strategies and cultural traditions unique to Argonian society. Unlike similar efforts in other places and times, these escape routes depended heavily on the difficult and dangerous environment of Black Marsh. Along with the Argonian superior skill in navigating terrain that would be impassable to outsiders, the networks were structured in a decentralized manner to reduce the risk of exposure and to maintain flexibility. Each group, usually made up of 3 to 5 members, maintained contact with others using coded messages, agreed upon meeting spots, and intricate natural signs that conveyed complex information without the need for direct interaction. These groups functioned independently, with no single member knowing the full structure or membership of the network. Safe locations along escape routes were hidden shelters placed in naturally protected areas, stocked with essential supplies like food, water, and medicine for those who were injured or exhausted. Many of these shelters were built inside hollow trees, underground tunnels linked to rivers, or well-camouflaged platforms in jungle canopies. These locations were specifically chosen because they were nearly impossible for outsiders to reach, often requiring swimming through submerged tunnels, climbing steep cliffs, or moving through regions with dangerous wildlife that trained Argonians could handle safely. Guides who led the escapes were deeply familiar with the geography of Black Marsh and had specialized skills in avoiding detection and leading groups through difficult landscapes. They often used false identities that allowed them to move freely between communities and even into areas controlled by their captors, where they could gather information on slave trading operations. The most effective guides earned reputations that spread through informal networks, enabling escapees to recognize trustworthy individuals using constantly evolving codes and signals designed to stay ahead of infiltrators. Funding for these escape networks came from multiple sources within Argonian society. This included successful merchants operating outside of Black Marsh, tribal leaders who saw the networks as critical for defense, and former slaves who had gained enough wealth to support others seeking freedom. These funds covered the costs of maintaining safe houses, equipping guides, and also paying bribes to corrupt officials who could give advance warnings of raids or intentionally mislead pursuers. The most effective uprisings happened when escaped Argonians worked in coordination with these resistance networks, combining their inside knowledge of enemy systems with the external support and expertise of the underground movement. These revolts usually targeted specific slave operations rather than launching broad rebellions, aiming to free certain groups and cause maximum economic harm to their oppressors. One of the clearest examples was the revolt at the Dres plantation near Cranmore. There, a group of newly captured shadow scales managed to escape during transport, overpowering their guards with improvised weapons and natural skills, showcasing the power of a well-coordinated resistance effort. Instead of escaping into the wilderness, these trained assassins chose to secretly enter the plantation complex, where hundreds of their people were forced to work under harsh conditions. Posing as regular field workers, they spent several weeks collecting information about guard routines, security systems, and the layout of the area. During this time, they connected with other enslaved individuals who had useful abilities, including a former shaman capable of making improvised weapons from available resources, and several captured warriors from previous failed defenses of their homelands. Organizing the rebellion demanded precise timing and total secrecy, as being discovered would have led to immediate execution for everyone involved. The revolt began in the early hours before dawn, when the guards were fewest and most people were asleep. The assassins silently took out the guards to avoid raising alarms, while others seized weapons from the guard quarters and began freeing the enslaved from their confinement. The rebels then set about systematically destroying the plantation's key systems irrigation used for salt, rice, grain processing facilities, and administrative buildings holding records of slave ownership and transactions. The successful uprising had effects that went far beyond a single plantation, shaking the entire slave trading system. Insurance rates rose significantly as the risk of Argonian slave labor became clearer. Many smaller operations couldn't afford the increased security costs and withdrew from the trade, while larger ones responded with harsher control measures to prevent future revolts. Psychological tactics used by former slaves and their allies were especially effective in damaging the morale of slave traders and their workers. Freed individuals often returned to spread stories of successful escapes, hidden support networks, and the eventual justice awaiting those who upheld the slave system. These stories created widespread fear and uncertainty, slowing slave trade operations and encouraging more slaves to attempt escape. Among the most advanced forms of Argonian resistance were rescue missions aimed at freeing high-value prisoners. These operations focused on liberating individuals like tribal leaders, powerful shamans, and figures of deep symbolic importance, whose freedom would deliver a strong message and show the strength of the resistance networks. The spiritual beliefs of Argonian culture stretch back far before the rise of mainstream religions in the region, rooted in ancient ideas born from the same chaotic forces that gave rise to the Hist. At the heart of these beliefs is Synod, viewed as a destructive god or assassin's patron, but as the essence of transformation, pushing all existence through never-ending cycles of creation and destruction. This understanding of Psi is vastly different from interpretations elsewhere, shaped by centuries of direct connection with beings that have witnessed the very beginnings of reality. Do you like this personality? Out of this primordial chaos came the foundations for awareness, including the strange intelligence that became the Hist and the beginnings of mortal consciousness. In Argonian society, reverence for Psi takes forms that might seem strange or unsettling to more mainstream religions. Rather than offering prayers or tributes, they honor Psi by embracing transformation personally and communally. This can involve choosing physical changes through Histap, or letting go of familiar customs in favor of innovative and challenging new paths. Ceremonies dedicated to Psi often occur at times of major transition, like seasonal shifts, the end of large projects, or during crises that call for adaptation. These rituals include consuming specially prepared Histap that brings on altered states of mind, allowing participants to directly experience the chaotic forces behind all change. Participants report visions of reality breaking apart and reforming, expanded awareness beyond the self, and deep understanding of the interconnectedness of life. This reverence for change influences every part of Argonian society. Their communities avoid rigid hierarchies and unchanging traditions. Leadership roles rotate on fixed schedules to prevent any one person from holding too much power or becoming tied to specific methods. Community duties also shift regularly to encourage diverse skills and prevent social divisions from solidifying. The relationship between Psi worship and Hist reverence forms a nuanced belief system that values both transformation and stability. Psi represents the force driving change and growth, while the Hist maintain essential knowledge and keep communities connected. This balance between chaos and order is seen as necessary for life to thrive, and neither force should ever dominate. One commonly misunderstood aspect of this belief system involves its comparison to the practices of the Dark Brotherhood. While both acknowledge Psi as central to their faiths, their understandings differ so greatly that it's as if they revere entirely separate beings. The Brotherhood's view of Psi as a fearsome father figure who demands death and murder greatly oversimplifies and distorts the deeper cosmic significance of Psi, reducing a profound principle of transformation to a mere symbol of assassination. This misunderstanding likely arose from incomplete information passed through intermediaries who did not have the cultural context needed to understand Argonian religious ideas. The Brotherhood's focus on death as an end in itself contradicts the Argonian view of Psi as a transformative force, where death is just one part of a never-ending cycle of change and renewal. The historical ties between the Brotherhood and Argonian society go back to the Shadow Scale tradition, which supplied the assassin group with both recruits and methods that improved their effectiveness. However, the relationship between the two has always been one of mutual exploitation rather than genuine religious fellowship. The Brotherhood gains from the extraordinary skills and abilities of Shadow Scale operatives, while individual Argonians benefit from access to resources and opportunities that support their own missions and the broader interests of their communities. Shadow Scales who join the Brotherhood typically retain their original beliefs while adapting to the group's needs, creating a form of theological compartmentalization that enables them to function well in both systems. These individuals often act as informal missionaries, gradually introducing authentic Argonian ideas about Sea to their Brotherhood colleagues, while avoiding direct challenges to the established doctrine that could jeopardize their positions or effectiveness. The Night Mother's role in Brotherhood theology presents particular issues for Argonian members, as there is no equivalent in traditional Hist-based beliefs. Most shadow scales who encounter the worship of the Night Mother interpret it as a localized expression of broader cosmic principles, rather than accepting the literal existence of a maternal figure who oversees assassination activities. This allows them to participate in Brotherhood rituals without violating their core religious beliefs, while maintaining the flexibility necessary for their dual loyalties. The techniques and philosophies that shadow scales contribute to the Brotherhood are often more refined and effective than the group's traditional methods, reflecting centuries of cultural development. Shadow scale training emphasizes patience, adaptability, and long-term thinking, contrasting with the Brotherhood's focus on immediate action and dramatic gestures. This difference in approach has led to tensions within the organization, as traditional members sometimes resent the influence of Argonian methods, even while recognizing their superior effectiveness. In Argonian theology, the concept of the void represents much more than mere emptiness or absence. It symbolizes the infinite potential before manifestation. This understanding comes from Hist memories of a time before consciousness took form, when all possibilities were valid. The void is both the source from which new realities emerge and the destination where worn-out patterns return to be renewed. Meditation aimed at connecting with the void requires extensive preparation and guidance from experienced shamans, as it can be psychologically dangerous to directly face unlimited possibility. Practitioners must develop mental discipline to preserve their individual identity while experiencing the dissolution of familiar boundaries. This process involves gradual exposure through carefully controlled sessions, expanding participants' tolerance for chaotic experiences. The practical applications of void meditation extend into various aspects of Argonian life, including problem-solving methods that involve temporarily abandoning conventional solutions in favor of those that arise from direct contact with infinite possibility. Skilled artisans use these techniques to create new designs that go beyond traditional boundaries, while tribal elders use a form of spiritual connection to find fresh solutions to long-standing problems that defy typical approaches. The link between action and the void symbolizes the ongoing balance between making changes and tapping into untapped potential, with action serving to bring specific possibilities into reality from an endless range of options. This process happens constantly as conscious beings make decisions that turn potential into reality, while also generating new possibilities through their choices. This interaction is seen as the driving force behind the growth of the universe and the rise of more complex forms of awareness. The spiritual practice centers around reverence for sentient trees, providing a structure that turns abstract beliefs into daily community traditions. Unlike religions that worship human-like gods, this belief system honors the trees as living beings deserving of respect and collaboration, not as divine figures needing worship or submission. The relationship is based on mutual respect and shared goals, not dominance or hierarchy. Daily rituals differ widely from one community to another, depending on the personality of each tree group. Some areas practice formal ceremonies with detailed rituals and group coordination, while others prefer casual, direct interactions and spontaneous expression. These variations reflect the individuality of each tree rather than differences in core beliefs. The preparation and use of sacred tree sap is the most revered part of worship, requiring expertise to ensure both spiritual significance and physical safety. Different sap types serve different roles, from gentle versions used in everyday rituals to more potent ones for major ceremonies or life changes. The preparation involves several stages of cleansing and refining, overseen by experienced spiritual guides to maintain strength and purity. The timing of these ceremonies is influenced by both celestial movements and the natural behaviors of the trees themselves. Celebrations often align with moments when the trees show heightened activity, such as glowing patterns during certain weather or subtle vibrations that suggest deep meditation or contact with distant trees. These signs indicate when the trees are most open to connection and when the sap is most spiritually powerful. The effects of the sap go beyond mere intoxication or altered perception, leading to actual changes in brain function and mental abilities. Regular participants often experience heightened senses, better recognition of patterns, and stronger empathy that improves communication with other species. These effects tend to be lasting, indicating that the sap causes real biological changes rather than just temporary shifts in consciousness. The blending of Psi reverence with Hist worship forms a spiritual system that values both stability and transformation. The Hist offer continuity by preserving vital knowledge across generations, while the influence of Psi prevents this continuity from turning into stagnation. The trees themselves illustrate this balance. They remain fundamentally the same over millennia, yet adapt to changing environments and evolve in their understanding. In Argonian culture, the honoring of ancestors is based on a distinctive view of consciousness and identity, unlike other traditions where ancestors dwell in distant afterlife realms. Argonians believe that the consciousness of the dead merges with the collective memory of the Hist, becoming part of a living intelligence that helps guide both present and future generations. Death is not seen as an end, but as a progression, where individual awareness expands to include greater insight and responsibility. Those who pass away contribute to a shared source of wisdom that influences the decisions and growth of the community. This belief is reflected in everyday life, especially in how people seek advice from ancestors during difficult times. Through meditation near the roots of their specific Hist and the controlled use of sap, individuals focus on particular issues, allowing ancestral knowledge to guide them through the tree's collective awareness. Death rituals reinforce the view that consciousness grows rather than fades with death. Funerals are more about celebration than mourning, marking a person's advancement to a broader form of existence, while still acknowledging the sorrow of losing direct contact. The deceased are typically buried near the roots of their Hist, where their remains nourish the tree, reinforcing the connection between life and the environment. This bond between Argonians and their returned ancestors is ongoing, forming a broader sense of family that includes both the living and the spiritual. Children learn to sense the presence of ancestors through dreams, while adults develop the ability to distinguish different ancestral voices during sap-assisted communion. This continuous relationship preserves the flow of knowledge and maintains a strong link between generations. The lasting connection with the Hist grants a kind of immortality that goes beyond physical life. The consciousness that joins the Hist retains its individuality and perspective, enriching the tree's decision-making with unique insights while benefiting from the accumulated wisdom of generations past. This arrangement meets both the individual's desire for continuity and the group's need for a variety of viewpoints and experiences. The creation of the Ebonheart Pact in the Second Era, year 572, marked one of the most unlikely political alliances in Tamriel's history. It united three races previously bound by centuries of conflict, oppression, and violence. The Argonians of Black Marsh, the Dunmer of Morrowind, and the Nords of Skyrim were driven to put aside their long-standing hostilities when confronted by a threat that went beyond their usual disputes. This extraordinary alliance was not triggered by any internal political shift but by an external force, the Second Akaviri invasion, led by their commander Hakashi. The Akaviri fleet that arrived off the coast of Windhelm in early 572 was a military power, the likes of which Tamriel had not seen since the First Era. The warriors who came ashore from their ice-covered ships carried weapons and battle tactics refined through centuries of combat in the frozen lands of Akavir. These included siege engines capable of breaching Nordic stone walls and alchemical weapons that could instantly freeze entire sections of the battlefield. Their disciplined formations and coordinated attacks quickly overpowered the initial Nord defenses. Traditional Nordic berserker tactics proved useless against such precise and fearless enemies. Windhelm fell after only a 6-day siege, a shocking development, as the ancient city had endured countless attacks over the ages. The invaders showed their siege expertise by using the cold and seawater to create massive frozen ramps and towers, impervious to standard fire-based defenses from which their archers could strike with deadly accuracy. The rapid Akaviri advance caught the disorganized Nordic provinces off guard. Their usual response to foreign threats involved slow, fragmented efforts to unite various holds. The invaders showed no interest in the drawn-out political dealings typical of Tamriel's major wars. Instead, they pushed forward with relentless focus, seemingly aiming to conquer the entire continent. Within weeks, they had taken control of the northern coastline and were moving deeper into Skyrim. At first, Morrowind's leaders reacted with cautious self-interest. The powerful Dunmer houses saw the invasion as a problem for the Nordzone that might even serve their own goals by weakening a historic rival. However, this view quickly changed when the Akaviri began testing the border between Skyrim and Morrowind. It became clear they had no plans to stop with the Nords. Akaviri scouts appeared in the Velothi Mountains, moving with eerie skill through the rough terrain and collecting detailed information on Morrowind's defenses. House Indoril, closest to the growing threat, was the first to correctly assess the full extent of the invaders' capabilities and intentions. Border patrols encountered camel-mounted reconnaissance units that showed advanced military engineering skills, including portable bridges capable of crossing wide water barriers and quickly assembled siege equipment. Even more alarming were reports of the invaders using what seemed like magical methods to communicate instantly over long distances and coordinate precise battlefield movements, suggesting an almost supernatural awareness of their surroundings. Initially, Black Marsh's response reflected the Argonians' usual detachment from mainland affairs. Many tribes saw the conflict as another case of warm-blooded races fighting among themselves, leaving the marsh undisturbed. This view shifted when the Hist groves across the province experienced synchronized disturbances, hinting at an unknown force probing their shared consciousness. The ancient trees sensed that the invaders were fundamentally unlike any known Tamrielic culture, detecting unfamiliar thought patterns and organizational structures. The Hist responded with strategic foresight on a timescale beyond mortal understanding. Instead of launching immediate defenses, they began creating specialized Argonian warriors, specifically designed to fight disciplined, heavily armored enemies. These new fighters had greater strength and agility, natural weapons capable of piercing metal armor, and scale patterns suited for camouflage outside their swampy homeland. Joran, known as the Skald King, became the central figure in organizing Nordic resistance. His early reliance on traditional tactics fell short against the invaders' superior coordination and equipment. Attempts to unify the divided Nordic holds saw limited success, as many leaders believed their individual fortresses could withstand the threat using conventional means. This belief crumbled when camel-led forces destroyed stone defenses with siege techniques that blended engineering prowess with apparent magical control over ice and cold. The turning point came at the Battle of Riften, where Joran's desperate stand was bolstered by unexpected reinforcements from Morrowind and Black Marsh. The Dunmer forces broke from their usual Great House strategies, deploying units tailored to fight heavily armored enemies and counter the invaders' rigid formations. The Argonian warriors astonished their allies with tactics crafted for open warfare against structured armies, a stark contrast to the guerrilla methods typically used to defend the marsh. Shadow scales accompanying the Argonian force proved especially effective, using stealth and specialized skills to target Akaviri officers, disrupting the command structure that underpinned the enemy's battlefield advantage. The success of this diverse coalition at Riften laid the groundwork for formal alliance talks. Despite deep-rooted distrust among the three groups, the Argonians contributed not just military support but also valuable intelligence gathered through the Hist's far-reaching awareness. These ancient trees had been monitoring the invaders long before the physical invasion, sensing their approach through subtle disruptions in nature. Heidemann took on the role of Argonian representative in the alliance discussions, drawing her authority not from traditional leadership roles, but as a voice for the Hist's collective wisdom. A seasoned warrior and diplomat, she had long served as a bridge between Argonian tribes, developing the skills needed to convey the Hist's insights in ways other cultures could understand. Do you like this personality? She played a crucial role in alliance negotiations, carefully balancing the representation of her people's interests with the need to remain flexible for successful collaboration with former enemies. The Argonian role in joint military efforts went far beyond supplying troops. They brought specialized skills that were vital in countering the strengths of the Akaviri. Their natural resistance to cold-based attacks rendered many of the enemy's environmental weapons ineffective, and their amphibious abilities enabled strategic maneuvers the Akaviri had not expected. More significantly, intelligence provided through the Hist allowed for early warnings about enemy movements and intentions, enabling allied forces to take proactive measures rather than just reacting. One Argonian commander stood out during the early stages of the alliance, crafting new tactics that blended traditional guerrilla warfare with organized battle strategies suitable for large-scale combat. Her units specialized in amphibious assaults, utilizing the region's rivers to strike from unexpected directions, and maintain secure supply lines that the enemy struggled to disrupt. Integrating Argonian forces into the Alliance's military structure required adjustments from everyone involved. Their approach to combat, which focused on adaptability rather than rigid planning, differed greatly from the conventional strategies of their allies, creating command challenges that needed creative solutions. These efforts ultimately showcased the potential for successful cooperation, even as core differences remained. Within the Alliance, a network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at helpopenai.com. Retry. Argonian shamans played a crucial role in military operations by providing intelligence and communication support. Their connection to the Hist allowed them to coordinate across vast distances without relying on standard messaging methods that could be intercepted or disrupted. These ancient trees functioned as living networks, instantly transmitting information between distant units and giving commanders real-time updates on enemy movements and battlefield conditions, an advantage that helped maintain tactical superiority. During the Akaviri War, shadow-scale missions marked some of the most advanced intelligence and sabotage operations in the region's military history. These elite Argonian agents infiltrated command structures and disrupted supply lines with great effectiveness. Their natural traits, combined with generations of training in stealth and assassination, enabled them to take out key enemy figures and gather vital intelligence for strategic planning. Over time, their success earned them respect from military leaders who had previously underestimated their abilities. Beyond warfare, the Argonian contribution to the Alliance had far-reaching economic implications. Their involvement raised critical issues regarding trade and resource distribution that shaped Alliance politics for years. They brought not just military skill, but also access to rare resources and specialized knowledge that supported the broader war effort. Negotiating fair compensation for their efforts required balancing their demands with the constraints of wartime economies. Collaboration within the Alliance led to cultural exchange and mutual understanding that had been absent during prior centuries of conflict. Fighting alongside other allied forces, Argonian soldiers defied long-held stereotypes and challenged the biases that had once justified their mistreatment. Exposure to foreign cultures offered Argonians new insights into political and social structures, while the diplomatic systems developed to manage alliance relations set lasting precedents. These frameworks fostered interracial cooperation that moved beyond traditional systems of dominance and exploitation. The Argonians' insistence on equal status and meaningful participation in alliance governance forced their partners to recognize the validity of non-human perspectives, laying the groundwork for broader changes in how the continent approached issues of race and representation. When the Oblivion Crisis struck in the Third Era, year 433, its effects varied across the provinces of Tamriel. Nowhere did the invading forces face such unexpected resistance as they did in the hostile terrain of Black Marsh. While Imperial legions and other provinces scrambled to respond to the sudden appearance of Oblivion Gates, the Argonians were already prepared. This readiness didn't come from traditional military strategies, but from the foresight of the Hist, whose ancient awareness sensed the crisis decades before it began. In the final years of the Third Era, Argonian shamans across Black Marsh experienced increasingly intense and unsettling visions. These prophetic dreams revealed fiery wastelands, unnatural armies, and most notably images of their own people invading otherworldly realms of torment and flame. The alien intelligence of the Hist interpreted these visions using their immense shared memory, identifying patterns that linked the upcoming crisis to ancient struggles between order and chaos that had influenced reality since the earliest times. Their response to these prophetic signs showed a remarkable ability for long-term strategy beyond the understanding of ordinary beings. About 30 years before the crisis, Hist groves across Black Marsh began gradually reshaping the development of Argonians under their care. These changes led to individuals with increased resistance to fire and magic, greater strength and stamina, and mental conditioning suited for surviving in environments far different from their native swamps. These transformations were subtle and appeared as natural variations rather than as part of any deliberate plan. One of the most important parts of their preparation was a mysterious recall of Argonians from across the Empire back to their homeland. This call began roughly 2 years before the crisis and reached Argonians regardless of their jobs, status, or connection to their ancestral roots. Official records note thousands of Argonians abandoning successful lives in various cities, walking away from businesses, military roles, and even families, drawn by a compulsion they couldn't clearly explain. The method the Hist used to deliver this call remains deeply mysterious. Those who returned described vivid dreams urging them home. The nature of these dreams differed widely. Some saw their ancestral groves burning and in need of aid. Others dreamed of battles where their participation was vital, and some envisioned personal transformation and growth. These varied dreams suggest the Hist crafted their messages to suit the minds and motivations of individual Argonians, encouraging them to return without causing mass panic or attracting the attention of imperial authorities. The tree showed a deep understanding of Argonian psychology, creating visions that inspired feelings of purpose and belonging while supporting the broader goals of their people. The Empire's reaction to the widespread Argonian departure was marked by confusion and bureaucratic inefficiency, typical of how it handled strange events in the final years of the Third Era. Local officials reported the sudden loss of dependable Argonian workers and soldiers, but these warnings were largely ignored by higher authorities who were focused on political matters. The few investigators who looked into the matter found Argonians offering vague explanations about family or religious duty answers that met legal standards but hid the real reasons behind their actions. Those who returned brought with them skills and knowledge earned from years of experience across the Empire. Former soldiers offered valuable military knowledge and an understanding of imperial tactics, while traders and artisans contributed information about economic practices and technological advances from outside Black Marsh. This influx of knowledge played a crucial role in the Hist's preparations, as the ancient trees incorporated these varied insights into their planning for the coming crisis. As the threat approached, Black Marsh underwent significant changes. The Hist altered the environment to strengthen defenses, encouraging the growth of aggressive plant life in key areas and reshaping waterways into complex, confusing networks to hinder invaders. Though these changes appeared natural, closer study revealed intentional designs meant to direct enemies into ambush zones where defenders could strike with maximum effectiveness. Military training in Argonian communities during this time emphasized adaptability rather than fixed defenses. Exercises focused on rapid responses to surprise threats, especially those involving supernatural enemies or those immune to standard weapons. Argonian fighters trained in harsh conditions meant to mimic those found in Oblivion, such as extreme heat, poisonous air, and disorienting magical effects. When the Oblivion crisis began in the Third Era, year 433, the gates that opened in Black Marsh were met by defenders who had long been preparing. The invading forces encountered an organized and capable resistance far beyond what they had seen elsewhere. The Argonians seemed to already understand their enemy's tactics and vulnerabilities, indicating access to intelligence that should have been impossible through conventional means. Most surprising were reports that Argonian forces launched counterattacks through the Oblivion gates, taking the fight directly into enemy realms. While initially dismissed as exaggeration or propaganda, these reports were later verified by independent witnesses, including Imperial observers and even surviving enemy forces. These events marked a reversal of expectations, as Black Marsh not only repelled the invasion, but became the starting point for assaults deep into Oblivion. These campaigns revealed careful planning and reconnaissance. Argonian troops showed in-depth knowledge of enemy territory, including supply routes and leadership structures, which should have been beyond mortal understanding. Their success was due in part to their natural ability to withstand hostile environments. Guided by the Hiss to develop specialized equipment and tactics, their resistance to extreme heat, magical attacks, and toxic conditions gave them a major advantage in realms designed to be deadly to others. Beyond their battlefield achievements, the psychological impact of these unexpected invasions deeply unsettled the enemy, proving as effective as their physical victories. Powerful forces that had grown used to treating mortals as prey or entertainment were suddenly met with opponents who showed no fear of death and fought with a level of discipline and efficiency equal to their own. Argonian warriors systematically dismantled enemy fortifications and eliminated resistance with cold precision, causing confusion among adversaries unaccustomed to such determined and capable resistance. The objectives of the Argonian forces during the Oblivion invasions went beyond mere defense. Their actions suggested organized efforts to gather intelligence and acquire resources. Captured enemy equipment and artifacts began to appear in Argonian settlements, indicating that the invasions also aimed to obtain weapons and knowledge for future use. The long-term view held by the Hist enabled them to see the crisis not just as a threat, but as a chance to strengthen their society by gaining new skills and understanding. The coordination between various Argonian units across different realms highlighted the effectiveness of the Hist's communication systems, which functioned even when conventional or magical methods failed. Multiple synchronized operations across enemy territories showed a level of tactical unity only possible through instantaneous communication, seemingly maintained by the ancient trees despite the interdimensional divide. Argonian tactics and equipment revealed years of preparation tailored for combat in these hostile realms. Weapons designed to exploit specific weaknesses in enemy armor and biology were deployed in large numbers, implying prior access to detailed knowledge of potential adversaries. Their protective gear allowed them to survive and operate in dangerous environments that would have incapacitated unprepared forces. The Argonian campaigns lasted far longer and covered more ground than those of any other province, with some units holding positions for weeks or months before returning. These operations required advanced logistical planning, including the creation of forward bases and supply lines capable of spanning dimensional gaps. Their success in these areas matched the standards of even the most developed imperial military efforts. The intelligence gathered during the invasions proved valuable long after the crisis. Information such as detailed maps of enemy strongholds, studies of tactical strategies, and inventories of weapons and magical techniques became part of a growing knowledge base curated by the Hist. This data was crucial for defending against future attacks and also opened the door to new technological and magical advancements inspired by enemy designs. In the aftermath, Black Marsh emerged in a far stronger position than other provinces. Not only had they defended their homeland, but they had also advanced their capabilities through successful offensive actions against formidable foes. The confidence gained from these victories led to greater assertiveness, especially in confronting long-standing threats like neighboring slavers. The military strength shown during the crisis became the basis for a more proactive defense of Argonian interests across the continent. The once powerful noble houses that had ruled over large slave armies and managed vast plantations were reduced to struggling groups, fighting for survival in a world growing more dangerous by the day. The political systems that had shaped Dunmer society for thousands of years collapsed, as key leaders either died in the initial catastrophe or lost control amidst the spreading destruction. House Riorin, located near the heart of the volcanic disaster, suffered such heavy losses that it ceased to be a meaningful political presence in Morrowind. The warrior elite, who had long served as the military backbone, either perished defending their homes from lava, or became isolated from their usual sources of strength and resources. A few survivors from Riorin escaped with chilling stories of entire cities engulfed in flames within hours, tales that spread fear and shook the morale of the remaining Dunmer. House Lu, once the economic engine of Morrowind with its far-reaching trade networks, saw its commerce collapse as travel routes were blocked and key cities destroyed. Merchant leaders who had once thrived on slave trade and luxury goods found their riches meaningless as the foundations of their wealth disappeared under volcanic ash. The fall of House Lu's economic influence meant the loss of crucial military funding and the breakdown of diplomatic ties that had once secured aid from the Empire during times of need. House Drez, whose massive slave plantations had sustained Morrowind's food supply, was utterly ruined as the eruption swept through their lands. Ash and debris rendered their advanced irrigation systems useless, and their slave facilities were either obliterated or abandoned by fleeing overseers. The enslaved were freed not by rescue, but because their captors could no longer control them in the chaos. In the midst of this upheaval, a new power rose in Black Marsh the Enzel faction. Once seen as extremists, their predictions now seemed eerily accurate. They had spent years preparing for this moment, building up their military and intelligence capabilities to launch operations beyond their borders. Their leaders, many of whom were once slaves, had deep knowledge of Dunmer territory and defenses information that proved essential for planning attacks. Cashew the Black Fin, who had worked with the Ebonheart Pact, lost influence as more militant leaders gained prominence. Her cooperation with former enemies was seen as a sign of weakness by those now demanding total independence and justice. This marked a broader transformation in Black Marsh, as previously defensive communities turned to more assertive strategies to defend their interests. and expand their power. The powerful families that had once controlled large numbers of slaves and maintained extensive plantation systems found themselves reduced to struggling groups fighting for survival in a rapidly deteriorating environment. The complex political systems that had governed their civilization for thousands of years collapsed as key figures either died in the initial disaster or lost their power to the advancing destruction. House Rioran, located closest to the volcanic destruction, suffered heavy losses that effectively wiped them out as a political force in the region. The warrior nobility, who had been the backbone of their military strength, either perished while defending their lands from lava or were cut off from their sources of wealth and manpower. The few Rioran survivors who escaped carried horrific stories of entire cities consumed by fire in a matter of hours. These tales spread fear among the remaining populations and undermined confidence in their ability to defend against external threats. House Lu's extensive trade networks, which had once formed the economic foundation of their prosperity, collapsed as trade routes became inaccessible and major population centers vanished. The wealthy merchants who had thrived through trade and commerce saw their fortunes reduced to nothing as the infrastructure that supported their businesses was buried under volcanic ash. The fall of House Lu's economic power removed a major source of funding for military forces and destroyed diplomatic ties that had previously allowed them to seek help from imperial authorities in times of need. House Drez, which relied on large slave plantations for agricultural production, suffered complete destruction as their lands were directly hit by volcanic forces. The complex irrigation systems that enabled the cultivation of salt rice were clogged with ash and debris, and the slave barracks, which had housed thousands of captives, were either destroyed or abandoned as their overseers fled. After the Red Year disaster, the slaves in Black Marsh were not liberated through any organized effort, but simply because their masters lost the ability to control them amidst the chaos. In this power vacuum, the Enzo faction rose to dominance within Black Marsh. Their once extreme ideology now seemed prophetic, as events unfolded just as their leaders had foreseen. The group had spent years preparing to retaliate against the Dunmer, amassing military power and building an extensive intelligence network beyond their homeland. The Enzo leadership, composed largely of former slaves, possessed deep knowledge of Dunmer territories, defenses, and key cities information crucial for planning military actions. Meanwhile, Keshu, the Black Finn, who had previously cooperated with the Ebonheart Pact, was pushed aside as harder-line voices took over Argonian politics. The Enzo viewed her past collaboration with Dunmer and Nords as evidence of insufficient commitment to true Argonian independence. This shift marked a broader transformation in Black Marsh, from isolationism to active defense and territorial ambition. In the months following the volcanic eruption, the Enzel showcased exceptional organizational skills. They had secretly stockpiled weapons, supplies, and gear fit for extended campaigns abroad, suggesting their plans predated the disaster. The speed with which they mobilized confirmed the existence of pre-planned strategies ready to be executed as soon as the opportunity arose. Their intelligence network spanned far into Morrowind, aided by former slaves who had settled in Dunmer communities. These agents secretly communicated with Black Marsh, providing real-time updates on volcanic damage, refugee movement, and remaining Dunmer military positions. Around 6 months after the Red Year, the first Argonian units crossed into southern Morrowind, disguised as humanitarian aid workers, they offered food, medicine, and shelter to desperate Dunmer survivors. This ruse allowed them to move deep into Morrowind with little resistance, while simultaneously conducting reconnaissance to identify strategic targets. The shift from relief efforts to conquest was gradual and subtle. The Argonians first took control of transportation and communication hubs essential for larger operations. Relief camps eventually took on the appearance of detention centers, and many Dunmer civilians didn't realize the shift until they found themselves under Argonian rule. Their military tactics blended lessons from the Oblivion Crisis with traditional guerrilla methods suited for foreign terrain. Rather than direct confrontations, they focused on disrupting supply lines, destroying isolated outposts, and expanding their influence through strategic control. Their natural adaptability and mobility gave them a strong advantage in the ash-covered landscapes that hampered conventional armies. The Siege of Tyr marked the first major battle. This heavily fortified border fortress, once a major slave trading hub, held symbolic and strategic significance. The Argonians used a mix of siege tactics and their natural climbing skills to overcome defenses built to resist traditional assaults. After a 3-week siege, the fortress fell. The fall of Tyr had a powerful psychological impact. Once seen as impenetrable, the sight of Argonian banners flying over its walls signaled to the remaining Dunmer population that their once great military and magical superiority had crumbled. The fall of the fortress removed the final major barrier to deeper Argonian incursions into Dunmer territory. As the Argonians advanced, they systematically targeted slave-related infrastructure, destroying plantations, slave markets, processing centers, and transport routes. These actions were both symbolic and practical, eliminating the foundations of Dunmer slavery and ensuring they couldn't be rebuilt. Along the way, the Argonians liberated surviving slaves trapped in damaged or abandoned facilities. These freed individuals not only boosted manpower, but also provided intelligence on local terrain and Dunmer defenses. The invaders soon established governance in occupied areas, enforcing radical policies that ensured Argonian supremacy while offering limited protections to compliant Dunmer civilians. Former slaves now held power over their past oppressors, a complete reversal of status. The new rulers reorganized the local economy to serve Argonian needs. Rice fields were replaced with crops more suitable for marsh environments, and trade routes were redirected to benefit Black Marsh. This transition had been planned long before the invasion, showing that the Argonians anticipated the challenges of ruling a foreign land. Dunmer resistance was weak. Lacking coordination and resources, their efforts were mostly limited to small ambushes. Their once superior magic and technology were ineffective against Argonians whose physical resilience and guerrilla tactics proved decisive. Continued eruptions, resource shortages, and internal divisions further crippled Dunmer defense. Many cities surrendered without a fight, recognizing the futility of resistance. The rest of Tamriel reacted with indifference. The Empire, preoccupied with its own crises, issued diplomatic protests but offered no aid. Many saw the invasion as just punishment for centuries of Dunmer slavery, leaving the Argonians free to expand. Realizing this window of opportunity might close, they began annexing territory, establishing permanent bases and administrative centers, turning a military retaliation into a lasting occupation. Meanwhile, Argonian migration spread beyond Black Marsh. Initially, individuals left for economic reasons, serving as imperial guides or laborers due to their unique biology. They faced harsh environments and cultural marginalization. By the Third Era, more settled in coastal cities like those in Cyrodiil, especially the Imperial City. The docks became hubs for Argonian workers, whose resistance to disease and affinity for water made them valuable in maritime roles. Over time, tight-knit communities developed, centered around shared culture and mutual support. While adapting to city life, they preserved their traditions and maintained connections to their homeland. The working conditions of Argonian dock workers reflected the systemic discrimination they faced throughout the Empire. Despite their essential role in maritime labor, they were often paid less than humans or elves for the same work. Argonians were routinely assigned the most dangerous and unpleasant tasks, such as underwater hull repairs, sewage maintenance, and handling toxic cargo due to their unique physiology. Their natural strength, stamina, and ability to breathe underwater made them ideal for these jobs, which would otherwise require expensive tools and trained specialists. Their waterproof scales protected them from the harsh, wet environments of dock work, and their contributions extended beyond manual labor. Argonian expertise was instrumental in expanding and maintaining harbor infrastructure throughout Cyrodiil. Underwater construction and salvage operations relied heavily on their abilities, allowing for essential work that others couldn't safely perform. Argonian dock communities often reflected traditional tribal structures. Workers grouped themselves by kinship or region of origin, forming support networks and ethnic enclaves in urban areas. These neighborhoods maintained cultural traditions while adapting to the demands of imperial city life. As time passed, some successful workers accumulated enough wealth to start businesses. These Argonian-run enterprises often focused on handling specialized or exotic goods, such as materials from Black Marsh or fragile cargo requiring careful transport. Though these ventures showed that Argonians could thrive when given the chance, they faced numerous barriers. Trade guilds often excluded them, and local laws imposed additional taxes and regulations on Argonian businesses. These obstacles limited their ability to compete fairly with other races. To overcome these challenges, Argonian merchants began establishing independent trading posts along major imperial roads. These included storage space, housing, and services tailored to their needs and traveling customers. These self-sufficient hubs demonstrated that Argonians could build sustainable, profitable enterprises when free from systemic restrictions. Despite economic progress, Argonians living outside Black Marsh faced cultural isolation. Separated from their homeland, they struggled to maintain spiritual traditions, especially without access to the Hist and sap ceremonies central to their identity. In response, some communities improvised rituals using imported materials or blended imperial religious elements into their practices. Naming customs were another cultural challenge. The long, symbolic names traditional to Argonians were often shortened or altered by imperial authorities who found them difficult to record. While shortened names became common in public, many Argonians preserved their full names in private as a way to maintain their heritage. Raising children in imperial cities required balancing education and cultural preservation. Without traditional mentors or village structures, parents took on the responsibility of teaching history, customs, and language. Some families sent their children back to Black Marsh for periods of cultural immersion, while others created informal schools within their communities. These efforts reflected a deep commitment to preserving their identity even while adapting to a broader and often unwelcoming society. Argonian military service in the Imperial Legion provided rare opportunities for advancement and recognition. Their unique abilities made them ideal for amphibious units, reconnaissance, and engineering teams focused on underwater operations. Their strength, endurance, and cultural discipline often led to excellent service records. However, racial prejudice limited their promotion, with leadership roles rarely given to even the most qualified Argonian soldiers. Those who achieved officer rank typically commanded all Argonian units rather than mixed-race groups. In academia, Argonians contributed valuable insights, particularly in natural history, linguistics, and magical theory. Their perspectives often challenged established imperial viewpoints. Yet, discrimination persisted to academic institutions, restricted their access to resources, grants, and career opportunities. Argonian scholars faced publication bias, with their work frequently rejected or delayed. In response, they created informal intellectual networks to collaborate and support one another. These alliances extended into artisan and merchant communities, producing innovations outside the bounds of formal institutions. Argonian artistry also found expression in imperial cities, where craftspeople merged traditional marsh techniques with urban materials. Their art introduced new themes and aesthetics to imperial patrons, highlighting their cultural philosophy. Religious practices, however, were harder to maintain. Traditional Argonian worship was often viewed with suspicion, forcing many communities to hide their rituals. They created private shrines, using imported hist bark, leaves, and sap to preserve spiritual ties, even if the full communion experience was absent. Second and third generation Argonians born outside Black Marsh struggled with identity. Often alienated from both their ancestral culture and imperial society, they navigated complex social dynamics. Some became cultural intermediaries, helping bridge gaps between communities, though they faced internal conflict and mental health challenges as a result. Economic success among Argonian families led to increased political participation. Wealthy merchants and professionals bought property in elite neighborhoods, joined civic organizations, and influenced local governance. This shift from isolation to engagement allowed them to advocate for their communities more effectively. Individual achievements in military, academic, and political spheres set powerful precedents, challenging stereotypes and opening doors for future generations of Argonians. Successful Argonian merchants, scholars, and military officers became role models, proving Argonian capability in leadership and excellence. Their stories, shared through oral traditions, inspired ambition in younger generations and reshaped perceptions within both their communities and imperial society. By the late Third Era, formal Argonian advocacy groups emerged, combining traditional consensus methods with imperial political tools. These organizations effectively lobbied for legal protections and policy changes, demonstrating the power of organized political action. As the empire weakened in the Fourth Era, Argonian diaspora communities evolved into unofficial representatives of Black Marsh, maintaining cultural ties and influencing broader Tamrielic affairs. The rise of the radical Enzil faction reshaped eastern Tamriel's power dynamics. After successfully expelling the Dunmer from southern Morrowind, Argonia emerged as a military and political force. Once enslaved, the Argonians now governed an independent, assertive state. Under Zilio's rule, the Enzo ideology emphasized racial supremacy and nationalism, advancing Argonian interests while remaining hostile toward outside powers. Renzil's administrative structures reflected both Argonian independence and control over a multi-ethnic population. Policies prioritized Argonians and tightly regulated non-Argonian residents based on perceived loyalty or usefulness. This created a racial hierarchy that shaped political rights and economic opportunities. Enzil economic reforms prioritized self-sufficiency. Argonia shifted from exporting raw materials to producing goods for domestic use. The leadership viewed economic independence as key to avoiding foreign influence and maintaining political autonomy. Militarily, the Enzo modernized their forces by integrating traditional strengths with lessons from the Oblivion Crisis and the invasion of Morrowind. Their military evolved into a powerful force, capable of both defense and projection of power, trained for diverse environments and adversaries. Modern Argonia's relationship with the Empire remains tense but stable. Diplomacy continues, but the weakened post-crisis Empire has little influence over Argonian policy. Concerns about expansion and the treatment of non-Argonians persist, voiced primarily through formal protests. Territorial disputes along Black Marsh's borders stem from the Enzel belief in historical claims and strategic necessity. They reject imperial-era boundaries and seek control over regions with Argonian populations or military value. These claims could spark conflict if regional conditions shift. International criticism has focused on Argonia's treatment of refugees and displaced populations. Enzil policies often disregard accepted norms for civilian protection. Former Dunmer slaveholders and their families face harsh reprisals, including forced labor and property seizure, under laws branding them as war criminals. The Enzil's policies serve both practical economic needs and symbolize the reversal of historical subjugation. Modern Argonia's diplomatic isolation reflects its aggressive stance and commitment to independence. Most foreign powers maintain minimal engagement, refusing to legitimize territory gained through conquest. This has reinforced Argonia's self-sufficiency while limiting peaceful resolution of border conflicts. Despite the Enzil's expanded exploration efforts, the deep marsh remains largely unmapped and filled with mysteries. Ancient hist groves in the interior house trees of immense age and memory, preserving knowledge from geological epochs and beyond the linear flow of time. These entities possess insights into reality itself, magic, consciousness, and the divine, suggesting that the hist operate on a scale incomprehensible to typical mortal understanding. Explorations of these regions have revealed bizarre phenomena, time loops, reversed gravity, and multidimensional life forms. These anomalies point to the marsh, acting as a convergence point between multiple planes of existence, with the hist possibly shaping not just biology, but the structure of reality itself. Ancient ruins discovered within the marsh predate known civilizations and are built with materials that resist modern analysis, living stones and undying metals. Their purposes remain unknown, and their construction suggests principles that challenge conventional logic and mathematics. These structures may have been created by the hist during their earliest conscious phase, long before known mortal history. Theories about the Hist suggest a consciousness formed outside standard evolutionary processes, possibly during the pre-cosmic chaos before natural laws stabilized. Their abilities, biological engineering, environmental control, and precognition may stem from access to timeless awareness and participation in previous cosmic cycles. This may explain their prophetic nature and long-term guidance of Argonian civilization. One particularly enigmatic idea is their link to the concept of the dreamer. The Hist seem to blur the line between dream and waking reality, possibly existing in multiple states of being simultaneously. They may influence mortal actions by communicating across potential futures, ensuring Argonian society develops according to needs yet to arise. Their apparent invulnerability to conventional magic and physical attacks further supports theories that they exist beyond current metaphysical boundaries. This leads some scholars to view the Hist not as typical divine beings, but as remnants of primordial consciousness entities beyond the influence of current gods. They operate independently of Aedra and Daedra, untouched by divine politics, yet capable of altering the world on a cosmic scale. Their neutrality and omnipresence suggest a fundamentally different kind of divine intelligence. Argonians, as the only mortal race guided by such beings, may play a crucial role in future crises. Their performance during the Oblivion Crisis and military operations since demonstrates their unique capabilities, resistance to magical influence, survival in extreme environments, and intelligence gathering that transcends normal time-space constraints. Argonian forces are not only effective against conventional enemies, but are uniquely suited to confront supernatural or interdimensional threats. Their strategic value goes far beyond terrain, familiarity, or guerrilla tactics. It lies in their connection to a cosmic intelligence that can perceive and prepare for existential dangers before they fully emerge. In a world increasingly defined by threats from beyond the mortal realm, Argonians may be the key to preserving not just their nation, but the balance of the world itself. Techniques developed to combat forces during the Oblivion Crisis might be effective against other extra-dimensional invasions. Their natural resistance to environmental hazards allows them to operate where other forces would be incapacitated, and the Hist's prophetic abilities could provide early warning of such dangers. The wealth of accumulated knowledge could be key to developing effective countermeasures, and ongoing research directed by the Hist may yield technological and magical innovations that could shift the balance of power across Tamriel. The Hist's access to knowledge across multiple cosmic cycles includes understanding techniques developed in previous realities. Some of this knowledge might still be relevant to the present situation, despite the changed conditions of the current era. The gradual unveiling of such insights through Argonian intermediaries could lead to advances in areas like dimensional travel and consciousness manipulation. The cultural development of Argonian society, under the guidance of the Hist, suggests that their civilization might be evolving toward purposes far beyond traditional political or territorial goals. Their focus on adaptation, transformation, and preparation for unforeseen challenges implies that the Hist are preparing their followers for roles that may only become clear during future cosmic cycles or in the face of catastrophic events, requiring abilities unique to them. This long-term outlook explains why the Hist have endured centuries of exploitation and harm, all while gradually strengthening their people and expanding their influence. The ultimate aim of the Hist in guiding Argonian civilization remains one of the deepest mysteries in the study of Tamriel's history and cosmology. Their actions hint at objectives that surpass the survival or prosperity of individual communities or even the Argonian race as a whole, suggesting that their goals may be linked to the very structure and evolution of reality itself. The Hist seem to be preparing for challenges that span vast cosmic cycles, possibly working to preserve consciousness during transitions that would otherwise wipe out all accumulated knowledge and experience. As the fourth era unfolds and the political landscape of Tamriel shifts, the Argonians stand on the brink of possibilities their ancestors could never have foreseen. Once victims of more powerful neighbors, they are now a force capable of influencing continental politics while maintaining ties to ancient mysteries that predate recorded history. The Hist remain as they always have, patient guardians of wisdom that spans the ages, preparing their descendants for futures yet to be revealed. Whether these futures will bring salvation or disaster, the children of the Hist will meet them with the knowledge of ages and the strength gained from generations of careful preparation. The swamps of Black Marsh continue to hold their ancient secrets, and those who listen closely may yet uncover truths that could reshape our understanding of existence itself.